The Deep Space Research Station, the Crucible, was less a station and more a vast, drifting metallic city, a graveyard for lost ambitions. Its skeletal frame, cobbled together from salvaged generational ships and repurposed mining platforms, hung like a forgotten satellite between the dead Earth colonies. For Elara Vance, a genetic historian who preferred the company of deceased civilizations to living colleagues, the Crucible was simply the universe's largest, coldest library. Elara's lab, designated B-17, was tucked into the station's neglected human sector, perpetually smelling of ozone and recycled air. She was brilliant, yes, but also fiercely cynical, having spent the last decade cataloging the biological failures of humanity's expansion. The diseases, the gene rot, the inexplicable collapses of promising ventures like the nearby Aethereal colony. Her work was solitary, her life minimalist, designed to avoid the political and social friction that defined life on the Crucible, particularly the friction generated by the dominant species, the Aethereals. The Aethereals, ancient, long-lived, and masters of bioengineering, occupied the pristine, high-gravity sector of the station. They were elegant, impossibly patient, and possessed a chilling genetic stability that made human volatility seem grotesque by comparison. They tolerated the humans only because the human sector provided the brute force and disposable numbers needed for the fleet's maintenance and defense. The strict, unwritten laws of interspecies segregation were the only thing that kept the peace. "Report, Dr. Vance," the COAM speaker crackled, cutting through the silence of B-17. It was Lieutenant Commander Jace Holloway, her immediate and irritatingly ambitious superior. Elara sighed, running a hand through her short, practicality-dictated brown hair. "The samples from Aethelgard's lowest excavation level are fully processed, Commander. No known pathogens, standard atmospheric decay profile. Just dust and genetic residue." "Check the anomaly again," Jace insisted, his voice clipped. "The one flagged by the preliminary drone analysis, Sector Zeta-9. We need to know why every organism we try to culture from that site instantly lyses." Elara zoomed in on a holographic display of the ruins, a jagged, half-buried structure unlike any human or ethereal architecture. It was clearly the site of some ancient, pre-human habitation. "I've checked it 5 times, Commander. It's an enzymatic incompatibility, not a pathogen. The local environment is simply toxic to our standard growth mediums." But as she spoke, a new alert flashed across her secondary monitor. It wasn't from her lab, but from the station's central medical bay. "Priority Level 1. Isolation Protocol. Initiated." She felt a sudden familiar chill, a subtle non-physical vibration that often preceded a major, disastrous event. It was a sensation she usually dismissed as anxiety, but it was insistent today, humming beneath her skin. She had always been strangely sensitive to biological signatures, a quirk she kept fiercely secret. A second alarm blared, louder, more demanding. This one was red, a pulsing, hypnotic warning on the medical console. The text was stark. "Patient 0 confirmed. Unknown, xenobiological agent, full lockdown imminent." "Commander, drop the Aethelgard samples. We have a problem," Elara said, her voice dropping the cynicism for pure professional dread. "What is it?" Jace demanded. "Patient 0 is a maintenance tech, human sector, just pulled from the atmospheric scrub decks. Clinical presentation is rapid systemic collapse and cellular necrosis. The preliminary identification is a Class 5 xenoplague." Elara checked the source of the report. It wasn't from the human medwing, but directly from the Aethereal's Biocontainment Authority. Before Jace could reply, the main station lights dimmed, plunging B-17 into emergency amber. A deep, resonant voice, the kind that vibrated the air, not just the comms, cut across all channels, silencing everything else. "Attention all personnel. This is Consul Kaelen Vex. By authority of the Interspecies High Council, the Crucible is now under total biocontainment. Sector divisions are sealed. All non-essential movement is terminated. Any violation will be met with immediate force." Elara froze. Kaelen Vex, the Ethereal Consul. The name alone carried the weight of a millennium of genetic superiority and icy control. He wasn't just a diplomat, he was a geneticist of terrifying repute, rumored to have edited his own species into a state of near immortality. He was also the living symbol of the rigid species separation Elara so detested. The station was locked down. And the source of the plague? Elara's mind raced back to the newly excavated ruins, the place that made all human and ethereal life forms lice on contact. Ethelgard. She looked at the small, hermetically sealed sample tube sitting on her bench, a gray-white fragment of xenodust from Zeta 9, humming slightly in the ambient light. It was the last piece of the ruined civilization, and now it was likely the first piece of the new apocalypse. The silence that followed Consul Vex's announcement was heavier than vacuum. The lockdown wasn't a drill. The station was a tomb. Elara sat in B-17, the power cycling down to emergency levels, watching the news feeds cycle through the handful of confirmed infections. They were all linked to the atmospheric scrub decks. The air, the very lifeblood of the station, was the vector. 3 hours later, a highly regulated, secure channel blinked to life on Elara's console. The icon was a stylized silver helix, the seal of the Aethereal Biocontainment Authority, BCA. Dr. Vance. You have 2 minutes to prepare for transport, Kaelen Vex's voice stated, completely devoid of inflection. Elara leaned forward. Transportware console, my lab is level 4 containment capable. Insufficient. You are the sole researcher on the Crucible who has recently handled, processed, or cataloged viable xenobiological remnants from the Ethelgard site, specifically the Zeta 9 complex. Your specialization is necessary, and your quarantine must be absolute. My specialization is dead civilizations, Consul, not fast-acting biological threats. I don't treat diseases, I excavate their histories. Precisely. This is not a human disease, Dr. Vance. It is a biological signature unlike anything in the Ethereal database. The speed of cellular necrosis confirms the preliminary classification. The rot, a Class 5 xenoplague, activated by environmental factors that only recently shifted on the Crucible. The only common denominator is the Zeta 9 dust. A heavy, low-frequency pressure wave preceded the arrival of the transport team. 2 ethereal enforcers, towering obsidian-skinned figures in pressure-sealed hazard armor, materialized outside her sealed door. Your cooperation is required, Dr. Vance, Vex continued. The only facility capable of researching the Sile rot without risking the entire station is the BCA's central laboratory, deep within the ethereal sector. You will be its only non-ethereal resident. Elara felt the dread intensify, but also a spike of pure professional curiosity. The ethereal labs were legendary, rumored to be centuries ahead of human technology. And yet, they needed her. You're imposing forced proximity, Consul, she observed acidly. In the middle of a pandemic, and against all standing interspecies. Accords. The Accords address peacetime, Dr. Vance. This is a survival mandate. Prepare your data. Do not touch anything. She grabbed the sealed Zeta 9 sample tube and her secure data slate. The Ethereals opened the door. The moment Elara stepped into the decontamination bubble, she was enveloped in a wave of high-intensity, sterile light. The journey was swift and silent, ending in the heart of the ethereal sector, a place of terrifying, pristine order. The biocontainment lab designated the Nexus was a single, colossal chamber, a silver cathedral of biotechnology. And there he was, Kaelen Vex. He stood at a central holographic console, his back to her. He was taller than most humans, with skin the color of polished slate and hair like spun silver, drawn back neatly. His eyes, when he finally turned, were the color of deep violet nebulae, ancient and assessing. He wore a simple, tailored BCA uniform which somehow emphasized the lethal elegance of his form. He looked, Elara thought with a familiar stab of resentment, like a sculpture carved from the dust of dead stars. "Welcome, Dr. Vance," he said, his voice the velvet-lined steel she remembered from the comms. "Your presence here is a necessary deviation from protocol." "Mine or yours, Consul?" Elara challenged, refusing to be intimidated. "I understand the situation. I don't understand why you, the Consul, are here to babysit me." He stepped closer, moving with a fluid grace. That was almost unnerving. The difference in their biological auras was jarring. Kaelen Vex was a monolith of control, his energy calm, distant, and perfectly regulated. Elara, despite her efforts at suppression, Felt like a flickering candle next to a lighthouse. Because Dr. Vance, he stated, his violet gaze piercing. The rot appears to have been lying dormant within the Zeta-9 complex for millennia. It is a biological lock that only seems to recognize a specific key, and I suspect that key is related to the historical interactions between your species and the ancient civilization that created it. He paused, lowering his voice. More. Specifically, I suspect the key is related to you. Elara stiffened. I'm a geneticist, Consul. I have no special heritage. You've seen my sequence. I'm aggressively average. Kaelen's lips barely moved, a micro-expression that was the ethereal equivalent of a wry smile. Average is a genetic anomaly I have never observed, Doctor. Now we begin the work. We have exactly 72 hours before the current contamination. Vectors breach our internal filters. We start with the Zeta-9 sample. The forced partnership had officially begun. The Nexus became their world. Locked down together, surrounded by layers of hardened biocontainment, Elara and Kaelen fell into a grueling, silent rhythm defined by the crisis. Days blurred into nights, marked only by the shifting spectrum of the lab lighting and the steady hiss of the air filtration units. The rot was a nightmare. It wasn't viral or bacterial. It was a self-replicating, genetically aggressive protein that targeted the least stable sequences in a host's genome, essentially forcing a catastrophic, accelerated evolutionary collapse. It fed on genetic entropy. The xenodust sample from Zeta-9, now vaporized and reconstituted into a submolecular cloud, occupied the center of the lab's main analysis chamber. The kinetic energy dispersal of the rot's signature upon contact with a human in vitro sample is almost instantaneous, Elara murmured, watching a simulation run. It's not an invasion. It's a thermodynamic consumption. Kaelen, who was tracing the pathogen's signature through a spectral analysis, nodded, slowly. Its complexity suggests intent, not mere mutation. It is a biological weapon, or perhaps a guardian system. And our human DNA is simply the fastest fuel, Elara finished, running a hand over the sterile glass observation pane. She was exhausted, but the proximity to Kaelen Vex was a constant, low-level thrum of tension that kept her wired. His focus was absolute, his presence overpowering. He moved with a languid efficiency that spoke of lifetimes spent mastering every task. And every time he came close, Elara felt that strange, internal hum amplify. Your heart rate has increased by 6 beats per minute since I approached the console, Doctor, Kaelen observed, without looking away from his data. Elara glared. It's the adrenaline, Consul. I'm human. We run on volatile chemistry. A convenient explanation for a strange anomaly. I notice you do not exhibit this volatility when analyzing the genetic decay of the Aethereal ruins, which is a process far more morbid. He shifted his violet gaze to her. Tell me about the anomaly, Doctor, the one you dismiss as anxiety. Elara tightened her jaw. It's psychosomatic stress. You, in case you've forgotten, represent an entire species I've been taught to distrust. Kaelen ignored the barb. When you touch the containment field, or even when you are within approximately 1 meter of the xenodust, the rot's active phase slows. Elara frowned. She had noticed it too, a brief, almost imperceptible dip in the reaction rate when she was near. She'd chalked it up to lab interference. Correlation is not causation, Consul. It's likely a static discharge affecting the field density. The field density remains constant. Your biological signature, however, is generating a dampening. Resonance, Kaelen contradicted, projecting a spectral scan onto a wall display. The graph showed a spike of electromagnetic activity that correlated precisely with Elara's recent proximity to the sample. It's not electrical, it's biological. Your body is generating a low-frequency field that is temporarily stabilizing the entropy of the rot's protein structures. Elara stared, her scientific certainty crumbling. This was not possible. She was just Elara Vance, orphan of the colonies, daughter of 2 forgotten technicians. I need to draw a fresh sequence from you, Doctor, Kaelen stated, his tone professional, but his gaze intensely focused. A deep sequence. I believe your genetic lineage contains an unknown stabilizing factor, perhaps an echo of an ancient engineered resistance. She hesitated, the thought of his ancient eyes dissecting her. Most fundamental code making her skin crawl. But the rot was killing people. Fine. Draw it, she conceded, extending her arm toward the diagnostic port. As Kaelen prepared the genetic sampler, his fingers brushed her forearm. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming. It wasn't the distant, smooth contact she expected. It was an electric surge that felt like recognition, like a long dormant circuit had just found its mate. Her internal hum exploded into a deafening roar. Kaelen froze, his slate-colored skin flushing subtly with an ethereal equivalent of shock. He pulled back as if burned. What was that? Elara whispered, clutching her arm. The lab suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. Kaelen adjusted his collar, his control snapping back into place. But his violet eyes were now burning with an intensity she hadn't seen before. That, Dr. Vance, he said, his voice a low, tight growl, was not science. That was recognition. Your genetics are not just dampening the rot. They are reacting to mine. We have a deep problem. The species prejudice, the professional rivalry, the shared intellectual focus, all were instantly overshadowed by the impossible, forbidden recognition that surged between them. Their forced proximity was rapidly becoming their destiny. The near-contact incident sent a ripple of devastating tension through the nexus. Kaelen and Elara erected invisible walls, retreating behind layers of professionalism, but every movement, every shared glance across the lab was loaded with the memory of that strange electrical recognition. Kaelen spent the next 48 hours running Elara's deep genetic sequence, a process that normally took weeks, with terrifying speed. When the results flashed, his usual composure fractured momentarily. Your genotype, Dr. Vance, is an impossible composite, he announced, projecting the results in a complex crystalline matrix. It contains markers, non-coding sequences, that are neither purely human nor purely ethereal. They are, in fact, a genetic dead language. The fragments trace back to the time of the first compact. Elara approached the consul, her mind reeling. The first compact? That's myth, Consul. A children's story about a brief, non-aggression pact between our species when we first met millennia ago. Kaelen shook his head. It was more than a pact. It was an alliance forged under a shared existential threat. A threat similar to the rot. The compact stated that if such an ancient xenobiological entity ever resurfaced, the Aethereals would provide the knowledge and technology, and a specific, genetically designated human lineage would provide the resonance. Resonance? The ability to interact with the rot on a bioenergy level, stabilizing it through unique frequencies. The technology of that ancient civilization was bioresonant. The rot is its defense mechanism. Your ancestors were engineered, or perhaps naturally selected, to interface with it. Kaelen turned to face her fully. Your lineage was deemed too volatile, too powerful, and potentially too dangerous to be allowed to propagate freely. The Aethereals took custodianship of the knowledge. The humans agreed to contain the bloodline. That was the real compact, hidden from history. The revelation was shocking, but the explanation, that her lifelong, inexplicable hum was a hidden power, was even more destabilizing. You're saying my family was the subject of genetic containment, a 1,000-year-long taboo? The relationship between our species has always been defined by containment, Doctor, Kaelen said, his voice soft but firm. We contain your aggression. You contain our impatience. This, your lineage, was the most critical containment of all, because the power of the resonance, used incorrectly, could destabilize the Crucible itself. He looked at her, his expression a mask of conflict. When I touched you, I felt your dormant resonance. It is powerful. And it recognizes the unique biosignature of my species, which was responsible for its containment. The taboo is not merely social. It is a safety protocol. Our species were meant to stay apart to keep the power dormant. The scientific crisis had spiraled into a deeply personal, forbidden romantic tension. They were two halves of an ancient, terrifying circuit, meant never to connect, yet now locked together, needing to complete that circuit to save everyone. So what's the plan, Consul? Elara asked, her voice deliberately steady. Do you contain me or do you use me? Kaelen walked to the main viewport, which looked out onto the silent, quarantined core of the station. The rot is evolving. The dampening effect you provide is temporary. We need a permanent cure. We need to go to the source. Ethelgard, Elara realized. Yes, the Zeta 9 complex. It holds the key. The facility there is not a ruin. It's a biological hard drive. We must access it, find the core stabilizing sequence, and create an antidote. It will require the ethereal knowledge and, I am now certain, the human resonance. He turned back, his gaze heavy with the weight of his years and his conflicted duties. We will break the compact, Elara Vance, but we will do it to save the fleet. I will pilot the shuttle. I will ensure your safety, despite the risk your proximity represents to my control. My safety, or your ability to access the genetic hard drive? She countered. Both, Kaelen admitted, the honesty striking her deeper than any diplomatic lie. My species is bound by logic. But I have spent 1,000 years preserving life. I will not fail here. And in the confined space of a shuttle, I require your complete professional discipline. The tension between us must remain a weapon, not a distraction. Elara nodded, accepting the challenge. The slow burn wasn't just about lust or emotion. It was about the collision of two ancient, forbidden forces. Then let's get the schematics for the surface. I'll map the safest descent route. The preparation for the descent into the abandoned colony was swift and meticulous. Kaelen selected the Stalker, a small, highly maneuverable Aethereal scout ship designed for deep gravity descent, and provisioned it with only essential gear. They were leaving the safety of the Crucible, fleeing the plague, and entering the isolation of a dead world. The tension in the air as they moved through the silent, abandoned corridors toward the launch bay was electric. The ethereal enforcers that usually surrounded Kaelen were absent. This mission was too sensitive, too forbidden for witnesses. It was just the two of them, their footsteps echoing in the metallic silence. As they reached the Stalker's hatch, Kaelen paused. Elara, he said, using her name for the first time without her title. I have reviewed the historical data. The genetic engineering of your lineage was done by my own ancestor. I am, in a way, biologically responsible for your existence, and for the compact that demanded our separation. Elara looked up at him, her heart thrumming the forbidden rhythm of her resonance. Then you are also responsible for the solution, Kaelen Vex. Let's go fix your species' mistake. The descent to Ethelgard was rough. A screaming multi-G plunged through a decaying planetary atmosphere. Ethelgard was a world of perpetual twilight and rust-colored dust, another monument to the folly of human colonialism. Inside the cramped cockpit of the Stalker, the forced proximity became acute. Elara was pressed close to Kaelen, monitoring the surface topology and the shuttle's structural integrity. Kaelen piloted the vessel with inhuman precision, his long, elegant fingers dancing over the flight controls. The sheer competence he displayed was a subtle, unexpected form of intimacy. Ethelgard was abandoned rapidly, Elara noted, watching the data stream across her panel. Not a plague, not a war, just environmental shift. The colony became non-viable within a single solar cycle. A systemic failure of infrastructure, yes, Kaelen confirmed, his voice smooth despite the turbulence. But the Zeta 9 site is deeper. It's a subterranean complex buried beneath the surface collapse. Our sensors indicate the architectural signature is non-Terran, non-ethereal. It predates both our arrivals. The creators of the rot, Elara murmured. Kaelen angled the Stalker into a narrow, seismically stable fissure. The descent was slow, agonizing. The ship's lights illuminated walls of polished obsidian-like rock, carved with symbols that seemed to shift and shimmer in her peripheral vision. The complex is located 500 meters beneath the surface, Kaelen continued. The rot's core sequence must be preserved there. We are looking for a central access point, a biological interface. The air inside the shuttle was thick with the scent of ozone and the subtle, earthy aroma that was Kaelen's natural, biological signature. It was an overwhelming contrast to her own. His was ancient, cold, and solid. Hers was volatile, warm, and constantly vibrating. She kept her gaze fixed on the display, battling the pull she felt toward him. "I'm picking up a localized energy signature," Elara reported, pointing to a spiking graph. "It's a resonant field, highly directional. It's calling us." "That is the interface," Kaelen stated. He landed the stalker in a vast, echoing cavern. They donned light, armored pressure suits. As they exited the ship, the gravity felt heavier, the air still and cold. The cavern was dominated by a single colossal structure, a pulsating black spire that drilled into the cavern floor. It wasn't built, it looked grown. "This is the subterranean heart," Elara breathed. "Proceed with caution. The rot may be airborne down here," Kaelen ordered, his voice echoing flatly in the helmet comms. They approached the spire. It was covered in intricate fractal patterns, not decoration, but information. Kaelen extended a multispectral scanner. "The material is a biocrystalline structure. It acts as both data storage and energy conduit," Kaelen analyzed. "I can identify several complex security protocols. I can bypass them, but it will take time." "We don't have time, Kaelen," Elara said, the urgency making her use his first name naturally, a familiarity that felt profound in the isolation. "Every hour we spend here is an hour the rot spreads on the Crucible. Let me try." "Try what, Elara?" "My resonance. If this is a biological interface that responds to my lineage, perhaps a direct contact will bypass the protocols." She took a step toward the spire. Kaelen grabbed her wrist, stopping her instantly. His gloved hand clamped down with surprising strength. The contact, even through the armor, sent a powerful jolt through her. "The risk is too high," he warned, his voice a low, fierce hiss in her comms. "If your resonance connects incorrectly, you could activate the rot's primary defense system, or worse, lose control of your own power. I need you focused. And I need this over with. I'm tired of being contained, Kaelen. By the Council, by the Compact, by my own useless history." Elara pulled her arm free, her fear and frustration overriding her caution. She strode to the spire and pressed her gloved palm against the cool, dark surface. The effect was instantaneous and violent. When Elara touched the spire, a blinding white light erupted from the biocrystalline structure, enveloping her. She cried out, not from pain, but from the sudden, deafening flood of information. The spire wasn't just a computer. It was a memory bank, and her resonance was the key, instantly accessing millennia of data. She saw the ancient civilization that built it, beings of pure light and sound, genetic architects of the galaxy. She saw them create the rot, not as a weapon, but as a stabilizer for their unstable, highly resonant atmosphere, which ironically poisoned any lesser life forms that entered it. Then she saw her ancestors. Not just the people in the Compact, but a deeper, older lineage. They were the ones who first encountered the ancients, the first who could withstand the rot's energy and absorb the resonance. They were not engineered. They were symbiotes, a rare human mutation that naturally mimicked the ancient creator's biofrequency. In the vision, she saw Kaelen's ancestor, Consul Vex the Worm, making the first compact. It wasn't a pact of containment. It was a pact of fear. Fear of the raw, untamed power of the human resonance, which threatened the Aethereal's hard-won genetic perfection. They didn't lock the bloodline down for safety. They locked it down to maintain dominance. The realization was a punch to the gut. Kaelen Vex, the man standing beside her, was an heir to a lie. The flood of data suddenly crystallized into a singular piece of information. The rot's original, stabilizing sequence. She knew where it was stored, how to access it, and more importantly, how to synthesize the antidote. Elara stumbled back, tearing her hand from the spire, gasping for breath. The light vanished. Kaelen was instantly at her side, ripping off his helmet and ignoring the environmental risks. His eyes were wide with a fierce, possessive fear. "Elara! What did you see? Are you compromised?" Elara, dazed but utterly transformed, looked up at him. She saw his protective instinct, his genuine fear for her safety, and the ancient lie his people had lived by. "I saw everything," she whispered, her voice husky. The rot is an ancient life support system. The antidote is here. And your first compact, Kaelen? It wasn't about protecting us from the rot. It was about protecting your genetic superiority from my lineage's resonance. You kept us apart because we were too powerful together. Kaelen inhaled sharply, his face contorted by centuries of controlled emotion. His lips parted, then closed. He looked away, then back. His violet eyes filled with resignation. The full truth of the compact is known only to the Consul line. Yes, he admitted, his voice rough. My ancestor was afraid. Your power, your lineage's ability to manipulate organic energy, was a wild card that threatened the ethereal belief in perfect, controlled evolution. My duty has always been to maintain the separation. I am sorry that it took this disaster for you to learn the truth. You knew, Elara accused, but the fury was already giving way to a strange, sad understanding. His duty was his cage, just as her lineage had been hers. He reached up, cupping her helmeted face in his armored hand. The distance between them, enforced by history and biology, collapsed. When you touched the spire, Elara, your energy, your resonance, slammed into me. I felt the pure data flow. I felt the truth of the ancient past, and I felt the complete absence of boundaries between our two signatures. The compact was a lie, a tool for separation, but the true biological connection is a profound, undeniable fact. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a raw whisper that vibrated against her own comms. I have lived 1,000 years in control, in isolation, and in one moment I felt everything about you. The risk is irrelevant now. We are linked, Elara. He reached inside his helmet and detached a small, multifaceted device. The antidote sequence, did you get it? I know the exact sequence, the location, and the synthesis method, Elara confirmed, her newfound power giving her absolute certainty. But it must be built into a resonant matrix, a crystalline structure that mimics the spire. It has to be stabilized by a powerful external energy field. Kaelen looked at her, his ancient eyes alight with a terrifying intensity. My species' primary energy source is our own bioelectrical field. It is the core of ethereal technology. We will use it. We will use us. They worked for the next 6 hours, Elara guiding Kaelen through the ancient console interface and the sequence synthesis. Kaelen had to physically channel his ethereal energy into the biocrystalline structure to stabilize the sequence. It was a brutal process, draining him, but the intimacy of their combined focus was exhilarating. They secured the finished resonant antidote in a sealed canister. The mission was complete. The taboo was shattered. And in the silence of the subterranean chamber, a forbidden, powerful bond was irrevocably forged. Their return trip was different. The silence in the cockpit of the stalker was not tension, but a heavy, unspoken understanding. Kaelen did not try to rebuild the walls. He was openly attentive, focused on her in a way that was far more possessive than professional. I have already calculated the risk, Elara, he stated, breaking the silence as they neared the Crucible. The Human Council will not accept your new status. They will see your resonance as a weapon now that they know the truth of the compact. And the Aethereals will see you as a traitor for breaking it, she countered. Worse, they will see me as compromised. The Consul must be genetically and emotionally perfect. My connection to you negates a millennium of ethereal propaganda. As the stalker docked, the comm channel, which Kaelen had kept on an encrypted, localized frequency, burst to life with a general urgent broadcast. It was Lieutenant Commander Jace Holloway, his voice shaky and triumphant. Attention all units. Consul Kaelen Vex and Dr. Elara Vance have been declared enemies of the Free Colonial Fleet. They are in possession of classified ethereal technology and are responsible for the worsening of the rot. Seize and detain. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. We have seized control of the Central Station core. A coup! Kaelen ground out, his jaw tight. They moved faster than I anticipated. Jace Holloway had ambition, not loyalty. Elara felt a spike of cold fury. They let the rot spread just to seize control and deny the cure. Precisely. They want the power, not the solution. They will claim the antidote for themselves, and they will try to weaponize your resonance, Elara. Kaelen didn't hesitate. Before Jace's team could breach the sealed docking bay, Kaelen overrode the docking clamps, ripping the stalker free of the Crucible's hull. The ship was not designed for a fast departure, but Kaelen pushed the thrusters to their absolute limit. The G-force slammed Elara back into her seat. "We're leaving the fleet?" she shouted over the screaming engines. "We have no choice. The cure is contained, but the mechanism is unstable without a full-spectrum stabilizer. Holloway's team will destroy it trying to reverse-engineer it. We must survive to disseminate it properly." He plunged the stalker into the void, threading the needle between the massive dormant hulls of the other colony ships in the fleet. Energy bolts from the Crucible's defense cannons crisscrossed the blackness, missing them by agonizing inches. "I'm picking up a lock on our drive signature," Elara warned, pointing to a tactical display. "A corvette. It's a human. Colonial Guard vessel, fast and heavily armed." "The Raptor," Kaelen identified grimly. "Jace's personal ship. He is leading the hunt." Kaelen executed a dizzying series of maneuvers, utilizing the stalker's small profile to its advantage, dodging behind a decommissioned Aethereal research vessel. But the Raptor was closing. "I'm taking heavy damage to the shields," Kaelen said, his voice strained. "Elara, the nav console, plot a course for the Kepler Nebula. It's an undocumented region, full of gravitational distortions and stellar dust. We can lose him there." As Elara worked, a devastating volley of fire punched through the stalker's aft shielding. The lights flickered, alarms screamed, and smoke began to curl from the starboard engine housing. The force of the impact threw Elara against the console. Kaelen, despite the punishing G-forces and the damage, maintained control. "The main drive is compromised. We're bleeding energy. We must make the jump now." Elara entered the coordinates, her hands shaking, her mind focused only on the geometric path through the void. Course plotted, initiating jump sequence. In 3, 2. The jump was violent, a gut-wrenching lurch into non-space. When they dropped out, the stalker was drifting, silent and damaged. They were alone in a chaotic region of swirling cosmic dust and silent, ancient radiation. The Raptor was nowhere in sight. The ship's internal systems were failing. The heating was off, and the cockpit quickly grew cold. The air recycling sputtered. They were hundreds of light years from the fleet, adrift with a weaponized cure, and a relationship that was now all they had left. Kaelen slowly turned, looking at Elara in the gloom. He reached out not to the controls but to her. He pulled her gently from the ruined console and into the safety of his arms. "We are traitors now, Elara Vance," he murmured into her hair. She clung to him, feeling the solid, cold structure of his form against her own shivering body. "Good," she whispered. "I was tired of their rules anyway." The forced proximity was gone. Now it was a choice. A forbidden love forged in fire, betrayal, and the cold vacuum of deep space. The following weeks were a trial of attrition and deepening connection. Adrift in the Kepler Nebula, the stalker was barely functional. Kaelen managed to stabilize the drive core on emergency power, but they were limited to sublight speeds, creeping through the nebula's silent chaos. Their existence boiled down to resource management, repair, and each other. The cramped quarters amplified everything: the shared breaths, the silent meals of nutrient paste, the subtle tension when they were forced to sleep inches apart in the tiny crew berths. Kaelen, the ancient consul of an advanced race, proved to be a survivalist of ruthless efficiency. He repaired the life support using spare parts and sheer ingenuity, drawing on knowledge accumulated over 1,000 years. Elara, the meticulous genetic historian, became his indispensable partner, her understanding of energy dynamics, now amplified by her resonance, allowing them to patch together systems Kaelen's purely logical ethereal mind might have overlooked. The intimacy was gradual, born of necessity. One night, while fixing a power conduit that was sparking dangerously, their hands brushed, and the familiar powerful surge of the resonance hit them both. This time, neither pulled away. "It's not just a frequency dampener, is it?" Kaelen asked quietly, holding her gaze. The purple of his eyes was almost black in the low light. "No," Elara admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "It's a connection. When I touch you, Kaelen, I feel a stability, a deep calm that cuts through my natural volatility. And I think I feel your history. You feel the isolation, Kaelen corrected, his thumb gently tracing the pulse. Point on her wrist. The necessary, deliberate loneliness of a 1,000-year lifespan, dedicated to guarding a secret that demanded I never bond with a volatile, short-lived human, especially one of your lineage. He finally gave her the full, painful truth of the compact. The Aethereals are stable, Elara, but we are also highly susceptible to psychic and emotional input due to our extended neural networks. Your ancestors' resonance, while vital for the rot, was deemed a potential weapon of mass control against our kind. It was not just fear of power, it was fear of absorption. If we connected, if I fell to a human, I could lose my mind in the torrent of your volatile, beautiful, short life. The compact was designed to prevent the ethereal leadership from being compromised by human emotion. He leaned closer, his voice a broken whisper. I have fought against you since the moment I saw your genetic sequence. Fought the duty, fought the taboo. But now, in this cold, dying ship, there is nothing left to fight. The distance is gone. Elara reached up and touched his face. His skin was cold, smooth, and perfect. Your control, Kaelen. It's a beautiful cage, but you've been alone in it for too long. My volatility isn't a weapon. It's a mirror. It shows you everything you've denied yourself. He closed his eyes, inhaling sharply at her touch. The first kiss was not a sudden explosion of passion, but a slow, reverent surrender. His lips were cool against hers, his control finally. Breaking, releasing 1,000 years of repressed energy, all focused on her. It was a merging of two forbidden, disparate chemistries, the ancient stability of the ethereal and the vibrant, resonant humanity of Elara. They spent days in the tiny cabin, their relationship cementing itself through shared vulnerability and the physical manifestation of their resonance. They were two outcasts, bound by a dangerous secret and a forbidden love that defied the history of two civilizations. Their survival now depended on both their scientific genius and their undeniable, profound connection. Their journey through the nebula, though slow, was not without purpose. Kaelen, using ancient, hidden nav charts stored in his own biological memory bank, was steering toward a mythological, ethereal safe harbor, the Sanctuary of the Lost. It's an emergency station, hidden in a collapsed star cluster, Kaelen explained one morning, tracing a complicated three-dimensional vector on a cracked monitor. Built centuries before the compact, for my species' own internal crisis. It is shielded, undetectable, and has the infrastructure we need to stabilize the antidote. After weeks of desperate travel, a single, flickering beacon appeared, against the backdrop of the nebula's dust clouds. They followed it into the heart of the star cluster, where a massive, ring-like structure lay dormant, perfectly camouflaged by a dark energy field. They docked the crippled stalker in a vast, silent bay. The sanctuary was functional but empty, powered by an internal, ancient fusion reactor. It was a place of profound peace, outside the politics and the peril of the fleet. Their first priority was the antidote. The central lab in the sanctuary was leagues beyond anything on the Crucible. Kaelen swiftly prepared the stabilization chamber. The rot antidote is chemically complete, Kaelen explained, pointing to the resonant matrix. But it requires a powerful, constant energy field to stabilize the chaotic sequence. My own biofield is sufficient but temporary. It needs a permanent source. The resonance, Elara realized. My energy. Precisely. We must use our combined biosignature, the merged energy field, to imprint the antidote with an EUA absolute genetic stability. It requires a sustained, total connection, Elara. It will be intimate, invasive, and dangerous. We will be pouring our very life forces into this structure. They prepared for the procedure. They stripped off their clothes, needing absolute skin-to-skin contact to maximize the energy flow. The moment Kaelen wrapped his arms around her, their two auras, the cold stability and the warm resonance, fused into a singular, humming field of light. They approached the chamber. Kaelen placed the antidote matrix between them, and together they placed their palms on the activation conduits. The moment they connected, the energy flowed. It wasn't pain, but a shattering total fulfillment. Elara's resonance poured out, the accumulated power of her hidden lineage, guided and focused by Kaelen's ancient stable biofield. It was a profound, almost spiritual experience, a total merging of mind and body. She felt his millennium of loneliness, his dedication, his fear, and his love, all distilled into one pure flow of energy. He, in turn, absorbed her vibrant, chaotic humanity, her passion, her fury at injustice, and her absolute trust in him. The chamber glowed, the antidote matrix humming with their combined power. The process was agonizingly slow, requiring every fiber of their beings. When the light finally subsided, they collapsed onto the floor, exhausted, but perfectly linked. The antidote, encased in a shimmering, stable crystalline shell, was complete. The Forbidden Union had saved the fleet. It took them 3 weeks to fully recover and prepare for the return. Kaelen used the Sanctuary's high-powered comms array to tap into the Crucible's network. The situation was grim. The rot had spread, crippling the station. Jace Holloway, desperate to maintain his illegitimate control, was hoarding the dwindling resources and hunting for a cure he couldn't replicate. Both human and ethereal populations were dying. "They need us, Elara," Kaelen said, watching the tragic casualty reports scroll by. "They need the cure, and they need the truth of our compact to face their future." They loaded the resonant antidote onto the stalker, now fully repaired by the Sanctuary's automated systems, and made the jump back. They emerged directly into the Crucible's core sector, bypassing the compromised external defenses. The station was dark, silent, and cold, a dying giant. Holloway's security forces were immediately on them. Kaelen stepped out of the shuttle bay first, the crystalline antidote held high. "I am Consul Kaelen Vex. I return with the cure for the rot." "Stand down," he commanded, his voice broadcast throughout the sector. A tense armed standoff ensued. Holloway himself appeared, flanked by heavily armed guards. "Traitor! You fled with stolen technology! Seize the antidote and the human witch!" Elara stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Kaelen. She was no longer the cynical, reluctant scientist. Her eyes glowed with the power she now owned. "The antidote is resonant," Elara announced, projecting her voice with a new, authoritative clarity. "Only a combined human and ethereal biosignature can activate its full dispersal. Without both, it is a useless crystal. And I am the required human resonance." Holloway scoffed. "Propaganda! Kill them and retrieve the crystal." As the guards raised their weapons, Elara and Kaelen acted. Kaelen released a burst of pure, focused ethereal energy, not as a weapon, but as a disabling shield, knocking the guns from the guards' hands. Elara seized the moment. She slammed her hand down onto a nearby, functional central conduit panel. Her resonance flowed into the station's main system, accessing the compromised air filtration network. She didn't fight the system. She synced with it. "The truth of the compact is over," Elara cried out. "The Ethereals lied to keep us apart and maintain their dominance. But we are here now. We are the synthesis, and we will save you all." Kaelen placed the resonant antidote into a central dispersal hub. He took Elara's hand, and together, they channeled their combined energy, their shared love, their shared power, into the crystalline matrix. The antidote activated. A wave of pure, life-giving bioenergy flooded the Crucible's air circulation, neutralizing the rot at a cellular level. It wasn't a chemical agent. It was a perfect, stabilizing frequency that restored genetic order. Holloway and his men collapsed, not from the energy, but from the realization of their defeat. In the aftermath, with the station healing, the remaining leadership, both human and ethereal, was forced to listen. Kaelen, having broken his duty to save them, stood before them, Elara by his side. "The compact is dissolved," Kaelen stated. "It was a lie built on fear. The future of the fleet relies not on separation, but on this synthesis, on the combined knowledge of my people, and the vibrant, resonant power of hers." Elara looked at the stunned, surviving representatives of both species. We are the key. And the key is a partnership. We do not demand political power, only a new truth. The Resonance Compact. We will govern the biological future of this fleet together, without prejudice. Any who fight this will be abandoned in the void. The victory was hard-won, but complete. Their forbidden love, now a public symbol of unity, was the foundation of the fleet's new future. The rebuilding of the Crucible took years, but it was rebuilt not as a fragmented graveyard, but as a true interspecies home. The sterile, segregated sectors were slowly dismantled, replaced by shared spaces, integrated labs, and a unified command structure. Kaelen Vex stepped down as consul, but his status as the primary biocustodian was solidified. Elara Vance, no longer a reluctant researcher but the acknowledged master of resonance, became his equal partner, the co-guardian of the fleet's genetic future. They lived together in the old Nexus, now simply the hearth, the place where their destinies had collided. It was a space full of light, complex biological schematics, and the low, constant hum of their combined resonance. One evening, years after the rot was vanquished, Elara stood by the viewport, watching the distant, faint flicker of the stellar dust they had once fled through. Kaelen stood behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist, his stability anchoring her resonant energy. "You still feel the static, don't you, my love?" Kaelen murmured, his voice rumbling softly against her ear. Elara smiled, leaning back into him. "The resonance? Always. It never stops, Kaelen. It's the energy of life, and it's the energy of us. But it's no longer a burden or a secret. It's just warmth." She turned in his arms. His violet eyes, now softer, reflected 1,000 years of peace he had never known before her. The humans and the Aethereals. They still fight sometimes, she noted, touching the smooth slate of his cheek. Old habits die hard. But they fight together now, Kaelen countered, leaning down to kiss her. They fight for the new compact, for the stability we gave them. And they are starting to mix, Elara. Not through engineering, but through choice. I have seen the first human ethereal children. They are unstable, volatile, and profoundly beautiful. Everything we were taught to fear. And what do you, the ancient geneticist, think of these new anomalies? Elara challenged playfully. Kaelen's lips curved into a genuine, unburdened smile, a sight that still made her heart resonate. I think they are perfect, because for the first time in a millennium, I have learned that perfection is not about control, but about connection. He lifted her into his arms, carrying her easily toward their private quarters. My duty is no longer to contain you, Elara Vance. It is simply to cherish you. Now let the resonance flow, my key. The night is long, and we have many years yet to discover the endless possibilities of this broken, beautiful life we forged. She laughed, a full, warm sound that banished the cold static of the void forever. The fusion of the ancient cold, ethereal, and the vibrant, resonant human was complete. They had found their sanctuary, not in a hidden star cluster, but in the shared orbit of their forbidden, eternal hearts. The new compact held, the ship endured, and the love that had once been a treasonous risk became the universe's most vital, stabilizing force.